Hello, welcome to Coffee with Ryan. I'm excited for this. We have it every second and fourth Monday of the month, 8:30 Mountain Standard Time, streaming on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, I think, and even YouTube Live. And of course, the recordings are on xlcoaching.net as well as YouTube. And always have great, fantastic special guests. And today I am here with Desiree Petrich. Did I say your last name right or wrong?
Petrich, you are very close.
I'm close. I have one of those last names too. So Desiree, I am super glad to be here with you. We had recorded a podcast a few months ago as part of your brand, and so now we're able to kind of follow up. So uh, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. What do you do, and where are you?
Yeah, so I'm in my daughter's bedroom because in Marshall,
Okay.
Minnesota, we have a lot of snow coming down. So my husband owns a snow removal company, so he's been out since 2 a.m. So I love where I'm at. I'm in the very southwestern part of Minnesota, so it's always fun and never quite know what's going to happen, but we love it. So I am a leadership development coach, and what that means is I kind of go on all ends of the spectrum. I do one-on-one coaching with individuals, either privately or because their company has invested in them to do so. Otherwise, I go all the way and do keynotes for individuals, everything in between, workshops with companies, group coaching with companies, and lunch and learns is one of my favorite things. I love that smaller, intimate group where I get to facilitate a conversation and really promote some change. So, everything across the spectrum, all about the intentionality of our leadership and bringing it back to us as individuals.
It's great. You know, super fun to be part of. What's your podcast about, and where can people find your episodes?
Yeah, so it's called Lead with Confidence. And it started as one thing, as everything always does. It starts to evolve over time. And it is, like I said, it's all about bringing that intentionality, that radical responsibility back to the individual. So my most recent episodes have been with someone in the workspace, figuring out how you can bring confidence into your work. And then I talked with someone about intuitive eating, how we can find more responsibility and excitement around taking control of that piece of our life. And the guest before that, I talked with them about how we can have our kids be more kind and learn what it means to not only promote kindness in ourselves, but with them. So, Lead with Confidence, you can find it on Apple or Spotify. I absolutely love all the conversations. Like you said, Ryan, I had an opportunity to have a conversation with you all about authenticity in leadership, and it's been so much fun. I love
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I kind of forgot what we talked about. Um, yeah, so different authentic leadership theories out there. Not necessarily theories too, but just practices. And we talked about authentic leadership as a really interesting one for us. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. I wanted to think of like one really great question for you, being kind of a leadership person. And like 7 years ago, um, I posted a leadership quote on Facebook, and that quote doesn't matter, but a friend of mine shared something from John Maxwell, which I was like, I'm going to ask Desiree to talk more about this. And and of course, I didn't prep you because that's the great thing about Coffee with Ryan,
it.
because we don't know what's going to happen. Um, but he shared a quote, and basically the gist of it is there's a fine line between motivation and manipulation.
Interesting.
And yeah, so when you hear that as a leader, um, obviously leaders, one of their roles is to motivate people, help them get to the next level, whatever. There's a lot of different things that leaders have to do, but when does it turn into manipulation?
It's kind of funny you asked that. I always say I am qualified to be a leadership coach and trainer and speaker because I am teaching to the people I once was. And I was hired into a management position within a dementia facility with a college degree, and that was it. I had no additional experience, but I think that the process, the journey of going from that place of being what I would consider to be a bad manager, because obviously hindsight is 2020, into being what I would consider a good leader is the process that I now get an opportunity to work with other people. To motivate your team is to get on the same level with them. And I know this is kind of a controversial topic. You don't want to be too transparent, too emotional with your team or your staff or the people above you because you want to keep that air of sophistication, I guess, or professionalism to you. But I think that there's something not being said about motivating people by showing them that you're also in this place. Sometimes it's the trial by fire, sometimes you get to prepare for things, and sometimes you don't. So, being able to motivate your team is just showing them that you're going through these same things that they are, and that you are willing to help them when they need your help because you've been through it too, and sharing that with them.
Yeah, interesting. I love the um, kind of the view of like a leader's on the same platform as
Mhm.
the people they're leading. Now, now the dark side of leadership or a leadership role. I don't know if I'd call them leader, but when does it turn into you're not motivating, but you're manipulating them into your vision?
Well, I always say I was leading from a place of fear. I was
Okay.
leading by not really letting anyone else show their opinions, their excitement, their ideas. I would come back and take a scan and see what was quote unquote wrong, in my opinion. And then I would attempt to go and tell them how to fix it with absolutely no point of view other than my own, with no understanding of the situation other than from the moment that I walked into the room. And so I they were scared to not do what I said because I was the boss. I was the boss in that moment and I wasn't taking any of the responsibility to say you are a team member that I hired because I trust you, so I need you to take on some of that. That would be motivating. That would be saying, I trust you. Now go do what you do best. Instead, I was manipulating by instilling fear and not intentionally. It wasn't like I was
Right.
trying to be a dictator. I wasn't attempting to make them scared. I was coming at a place of, I'm responsible for you because I'm the leader. And I'm terrified that you're going to do something that makes me look bad, right? I was new. I didn't understand that in order to motivate one another, we needed to build each other up. I felt like I needed to motivate through that sense of you need to be doing what I say when I say. And that's where the manipulation piece comes in. And the whole mindset of that shifted when COVID hit. And all of a sudden, like 99% of everything was outside of our control. 99% of every rule that was in place was something that came from way higher up than anything I could have control over. And I realized that I wasn't in a place to control anything at that point. I needed my team to stay there. We weren't able to replace people at that point. I wasn't allowed to leave my office without gloves and a mask and a face shield. And so in order to motivate the team to do the right things and to show up day after day and to some of the rules were ridiculous, not because they weren't necessary, but because it's like, who would have ever thought, who in their right mind would have ever thought we'd ever have to do anything like this? And so to show up with a positive energy, not a fake toxic positivity, but a genuine, authentic, like, we are here for a purpose and let's have some optimism around that. That's when it started to shift from that manipulation, that place of leading from fear, into a place of being excited that we kind of got to go on the journey together. And I was motivating them just as they were motivating me to keep going from day to day.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you were, um, so when that mind shift, what started happening in your mind with your mind shift and on the I got to lead different, and then how did you start taking steps um, in changing your or maybe growing your leadership?
Yeah, and it didn't start with trying to get better professionally. Like I said, hindsight is 2020. In that moment, I didn't realize that I wasn't leading in the way that I should have been. I didn't realize that there was a problem. No one trusted me enough. We hadn't built that trust in our relationship for someone to come to me and say, you're kind of stuck as a leader, right? I had to figure that out on my own. And how that actually started was a physical health journey. I was 6 months postpartum when COVID hit. And so not only was I out of control at work, I also felt out of control with my physical health. And so I started a health journey of waking up every morning and working out and eating healthy and coaching, doing exercise coaching, nutrition coaching on the side. That was kind of the vessel that I used. All the personal development books that I was reading, all the podcasts I was listening to, I was applying to my life at home, to my life in this journey of physical health. But as I saw myself starting to trust myself more in that space, I started to begin to trust other people more. I started to feel more confident in my abilities and knowing that even if we made a mistake, even if I made a mistake or someone else did, it wasn't life or death like so much else outside of our control. It was a very scary time. So I started to take control of the very few things that I had the capability to control. And that started to trickle its way into those lessons that I had learned from my physical health journey were now making their way into my leadership and into kind of motivating and inspiring people by the fact that I was changing, not only physically, but mentally too. I was getting stronger.
Let's see. And talked about it quite a bit a couple weeks ago with my guy I was having coffee with. But yeah, talk more about trust. How did you start? You said something about trusting yourself. Like, what does that actually mean?
I came to work every day with this desire to look like I had it all put together. I mean, I wasn't just working with employees. I was working with the 30 tenants that we had living in the building. I was working with all of their family members. And so I keep coming back to this time because I didn't want anyone to know that I didn't have things under control. So I wasn't trusting the people that were around me. And in order to begin to feel okay to let them see that I wasn't completely excited about the things that were happening, I had to let them in. I had to trust them before I felt ready in a way to say, this sucks. Like, this situation is out of our control and we have to band together. We have to be willing to go on this journey together. So, when I started setting goals for myself and flexing that discipline muscle a little bit, asking myself the right questions, really getting into a mindset of I can do hard things. And I started to trust myself to do the things that I said I was going to do outside of work. Then I could come in and say, you need to trust that you're going to do the things that you say you're going to do. And at work, that looked like not complaining about the situation that we were in, about trusting each other to not bring each other down in a negative way, because it's so easy to get in your head. It's so easy to let those first thoughts that we have, the negative thoughts, start to drag us down. But if we can start to conquer our mindset in a way, in that control that we hold, in the ability to ask ourselves the right questions, once we can start to see that positivity come out of it, then we can start to trust other people with it. We don't have to be put together all the time because we trust that we have a strong enough mindset, a strong enough control over the way that our mind works. And we don't have to have this air of perfection all the time. Because if it's all or nothing, we kind of default to nothing. That perfectionism isn't an option. And once we're willing to be transparent and authentic and share that with other people, then they can start to have that for themselves too.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, back to that. Um, that that motivation, that thin line between motivation and manipulation. And when you talked about starting to trust people, trust yourself, and it trickled in. Um, so then, what does it look like for a leader who might be kind of in that, like, we need to have everything right? How can they start to shift to trust their team?
It all comes back to that's why I always say the best way to connect with one another is to individualize ourselves from each other. And I know that sounds kind of counteractive because when you're a team, you want to grow together. You want to grow together, not further individualize each other. But knowing each other better, seeing both the good and the bad of not only what we're going through so that people can support us in that journey, but so that we can do it for them, we can really come back to saying, you know, I'm not perfect, but here's the things I want to work on. Sometimes I can hold myself accountable to these, but sometimes I need you to hold me accountable. And having that trust with each other of saying, like, call me out. It really does start to put you in a place that is, you're ready. You're ready to start to move into that. But you have to kind of decide that first. I, I've asked people this question because I don't know the answer, but do you have to hit rock bottom in order to start building yourself back up? Like, do you have to hit rock bottom? I don't know the answer. And if you don't, how do you start to go the opposite direction? But if you do have to hit rock bottom first, which almost every single time that I have had an epiphany of sorts, a personal development epiphany, I've had to hit that rock bottom and climb my way back up and asking those right questions, realizing that I can trust myself, realizing that there's other people around me that can start to help me with that. That's really where that journey starts to develop. So I'm curious, Ryan, can I turn around and ask you, do you have to hit rock bottom?
Thinking about that too, like, I I'd also probably agree, like, I don't know, but the times that I've learned the most and, have grown the most is times where I feel like, yeah, I feel like there was, like, a rock bottom. Um, Now whether it's true that that was actually rock bottom or I just felt it, I think one way or the other, there has to be something internally in a person when they're like, I can't keep doing this. All right, things can't keep being the same.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I am home with my kids right now, and my daughter's at the bottom of the stairs yelling, Mom, I need you. This is a leadership journey right here, Ryan.
No joke. No joke. I thought having a puppy was tough, and then
No.
you started having kids. Man, no.
But
No,
yeah,
that's
I totally agree with you. Every situation that I've had has come out of rock bottom. And as much as you like to think you can prepare for those things, which I do think you can, I think that there's a way to prepare for them. But the fact that you're preparing for something that you don't know what it is yet, it just makes it so hard to really like fully, truly prepare for it, if that makes sense.
yeah, and, thinking about that, just kind of, uh, that quote that I or that saying, that there's a fine line between motivation and manipulation. It was actually, like, a coworker of mine, and we both, I was getting ready to leave, this toxic environment, and he was shortly thereafter, and so the context was we were actually under a leader we felt was pretty manipulative, whether he intended to or not, I don't know, but it and always the reflection, like, experiences don't matter, right, if you don't ever reflect on them and learn from them. So it's kind of, reflecting, even years later, it's like, yeah, like, I hope I'm not that kind of leader, or I hope I don't treat people that way because I was treated that way and it was terrible.
Yeah, and I've had those leaders too. And you hate to say like it's a double-edged sword because it's hard to come into a leadership journey, especially without a ton of experience, or to feel like you have to start from scratch, to feel like you have to come into a situation and every time you have to rebuild that trust, you have to rebuild not only in yourself, because if you're starting in a position with a new company, there are new things to learn. You do kind of have to start from scratch in a way, but it's also exciting. And if you can flip your mindset to say, I have to start over, but that's exciting. I have to build these relationships again, but that's an opportunity. That's the mindset shift. That's the change from that manipulation. Sometimes I even feel like I'm manipulating myself. I I always say the first thought that we have, if you wake up at 5 a.m. because your alarm goes off, if the very first thought that you have is, I want to go to sleep, I'm tired, I don't want to wake up right now, and you go back to sleep, there's no lesson there. Like, there's no thought process. If the very first thought that you have is the one that you go with, there's no thought process. There's two ways that you can learn from a situation like that. If your alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and you have this conversation with yourself and you say, I am tired, but I have goals. Why did I set that goal? Why did I set my alarm? Why do I want to wake up? And if you can have that argument, that conversation with yourself, and you do decide to get up, you're going to learn from that. The next morning you're going to say, yesterday I felt so good. I felt so elated. I'm so happy that I woke up. You're going to remember that. The second way is if you wake up in the morning and you have that conversation with yourself and ultimately you say, I really am truly tired. I'm going to go back to bed right now. That next morning, you're going to remember that. You're going to say, God, last night I felt a lot of regret around the fact that I didn't wake up. I didn't do what I say I was going to do. I broke a little bit of that trust with myself, and I don't want to do that. I want to identify as the person who does what I say I'm going to do. I want to identify as a disciplined person. And so that's kind of what kept me going, the
Mm.
accountability to myself. But you're going to learn lessons either way, as long as you're having that conversation with yourself, as long as you're taking on those options that you have.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so being a leadership coach, what do you see leaders doing now? Um, kind of, is there a common theme in the workplace? Um,
Honestly, I've been very fortunate that a lot of the leaders that I've worked with are excited about leadership. They're really excited, which it's not like my situation where they were thrown in to the wolves a little bit on their own accord. It was something that I chose to do. But they're excited. They want to learn. They want to do all the things. So that's kind of the trend that I'm seeing in leadership right now, is that there's an excitement around the fact that it's no longer management. It's no longer like you assume that you have to do what they say that you have to do, when they say you have to do it, in the way that they say you have to do it. It's no longer that feeling of like being stuck in a box. People are realizing that leadership is exciting. Leadership is a visionary type role. You do get to hold that space for other people to learn and grow. You do get to offer those opportunities for people. So, obviously, I've gotten brought into a situation or a few where this leader is just not up to par. This leader is not good with their people that they're leading. This person probably should have been fired a while ago, but they haven't been fired yet. Like, I've been brought into those situations. But I would argue to say that the trend that I have been brought into is the excitement around it, and saying, we want this. We know what the goal is. We are willing to invest in this for either ourselves or the people that are under us, but we just don't know how to do that yet. And so it's more of an excitement yet an unknowing, versus people are getting forced to join this training because they're just not up to par.
yeah, there definitely seems to be um, like this desire to buck the status quo from a lot of leaders that I've been talking to and have had chances to interact with. So it's been really neat to see. So there's a lot more creativity around that too, of people working from home or having some sort of flex uh, work arrangement. um, Sorry, I don't, my uh, thing just wanted to do a scan, which is like the worst time, right? But yeah, so there's that, seems to be that creativity um, on how to lead people differently, because not everybody's the same. Yeah, what kind of and I should say, like, if you're watching and you got a comment or question for me or Desiree, please drop that in the chat. We'd love to see what you guys are thinking. And if you're seeing a leadership trend or challenges too, like we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But Desiree, when someone approaches you about like coaching, leadership coaching, um, what does that look like? What's your process, and what do you help them do?
So I wrote a book recently. I was telling Ryan about it. It's currently in the editing process, but the process that I use to coach individuals through is the process that I went through to coach individuals, and to coach myself through this process of starting where I was to where I wanted to be. There was this huge gap, and I had to kind of figure out how to close it by myself. I had a leader who was willing to invest in me, but I wasn't ready yet. I wasn't to that point where I was like, yes, hire someone to help me. Like, I want that. I had to figure that out for myself. And so, this process that I went through, it started with evaluating my excuses. Why was I struggling? Why was I so against the idea of, you know, growing as a leader and being more trustworthy and accountable and responsible, not only to the place where I was working, but the community as a whole? And why was I so against that? So the first thing was to evaluate my excuses in that. Can you hear my daughter right now?
Ken,
Oh my gosh, I am so
this is
sorry.
Ken. Okay.
I hope any parent on here is just laughing right now. My son turned off the TV and she's panicking because her baby shark got turned off. Sorry. The second piece of it is just you have to make that decision. And I said that before. Can I have you talk for one moment, Ryan? Can I just can I just be real with you and authentic? I'll be right back.
Uh, yeah, it's kind of the you never know what's going to happen. Um, so yeah, anybody love to hear what you guys are thinking. We got a few people on with us. I'd love to answer a question or give a thought on it. Um, so I'm seeing the Open Mind podcast. Um, what's the Open Mind podcast? That's interesting. Yeah, so I will say it's been um, I'll talk about Excel coaching. So if you want to connect with me, go to excelcoaching.net. You can see it there on the screen. Um, and Excel Coaching is actually named after my kids, Xander with an X and Lucas, twin boys that are almost 20 months. So,
And the last time I talked to you, they were sick, which
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if we're right back in that cycle again.
right. Now it's, uh, now it's feeding. You would have heard Xander screaming earlier about something that had to do with not wanting to eat and was just being uh, you know a toddler. So
Yeah. Well, I had the conversation with someone earlier. I was like, at what age does toddler stop? Because I have a 4.5-year-old. And I'm like, I don't think we're there yet.
yeah, no kidding. Um, but anyway,
Yes,
so
I can jump back in. So
yeah.
the second piece is just choosing to go into that process. When
Hmm.
my son was born, he was 5 minutes old when they found out he needed to be brought to the NICU, which was a helicopter ride or a fixed wing plane or an ambulance right away. But we were again in a Minnesota blizzard, it wasn't an option. And so after having gone through that journey, both the physical and the leadership journey, I realized I had to choose in that moment to give the responsibility away. I did not have the knowledge, I didn't have the skills to take care of that situation. The only thing I could control in that moment was my mindset around it. And thankfully, I had been preparing. I had chosen to do the work beforehand because I don't think that I could have gotten through that situation had I done that. I probably would have been micromanaging the doctors and nurses who were trying to keep my son alive, which I had no business doing. But I had gone through that work, and so I had to choose that in that moment. And the same thing when a month later we got home from the NICU and my mom had a stroke. I had no control in that moment, just like I had no control when COVID hit. You have to allow other people to do their job. And I think as leaders, a lot of times that's the piece that we're missing. We're we're so consumed with the thought that we have this responsibility. We are responsible for the engagement and commitment of not only ourselves, but our team. We hold that responsibility, and that can seem really heavy sometimes. That can seem like there's not a lot of ways to direct that energy. Things have to go right because it's your responsibility. But when we can start to turn over some of that to the people that are excited, they're passionate about taking on some of those projects that we hold on to so tight because we think we're the only ones who can do them and do them right. And I still struggle with this. I still struggle with that control. So we have to choose the life we want. We have to choose the relationships that we want, both inside and outside of work. We have to choose to thrive in that situation. And then a pretty good remainder of the book is about how to lead with love over fear. I talked earlier about leading from that place of fear, feeling like I had to take on all the responsibility, identifying what it looks like to be leading from fear. It's the micromanaging, it's the not wanting other people to know what it is that you do because you don't want them to take your job. It's the not delegating. It's staying until 7 p.m. at night because you don't want them to think you're not trying hard enough. It's working on the weekends because you don't want to not be available because someone else will be willing to be available. It's leading from fear versus what does it look like to lead from love? A pretty good chunk of the back half of my book is on my journey with that, my mom's journey with that. And then I have an entire chapter in there about what it looks like to hit rock bottom, to know exactly how to climb your way out of it because you've done it before, but it really is hard. It's hard every single time it happens. It's going to remain hard if we don't start to take some control of that situation. And so, I love to say that we can be prepared for those things, but I don't truly think that there is a way to avoid rock bottom. I think sometimes it creates the best lessons for us. And that's the journey that I'm taking these individuals on when I'm coaching with them. It's identifying those excuses. It's where do you want to be? What is that gap? What are the skills you have to acquire? How do you have to change your mindset to truly believe that you can get from where you are right now to where you want to be? It's the consistency. Once you've decided what habits, what goals are going to change your life, how do you implement them? How do we come back from week to week and say, I'm not going to just tell you again. I'm going to show you that I've actually put work into this. And it's really just sometimes the accountability is needed. And sometimes it's just someone there asking the better questions, asking those questions of you so that you can start to formulate the answers by yourself. Because 99% of the time, people know the answers to the questions they're asking or not asking. They just need someone to facilitate that conversation.
Of what a coach really is.
Well,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
um, so what got you into why coaching? Why'd you start your own business? Why are you doing doing this thing?
Well, I started my personal development journey, for weight loss, and I did all the coaching through that. I loved it. I was really good at it. But when I had my second son, and then my mom she ended up passing away 2 months after her first stroke, and it was really hard. But she left me a small amount of money, and I said, I don't want to just buy something with this. I said, I want to make something with this. I want to leave a legacy for my mom and for my kids. I want to do something with it. And I said, I've been through that journey. I've hit rock bottom. I know what it looks like to go from being a bad manager to a good leader. I I've been there. I've done that, and I missed coaching people. I missed having that connection with people of saying, I believe in you. if even if you don't see it right now, I believe in you, which I think is what a good leader is. It's helping to instill that inspiration and that belief in someone, even if they don't see their full potential yet. And so I decided to start a business. Like I said, it's evolved a lot. I didn't exactly know what I wanted it to look like. I started out getting my John Maxwell certification in speaking, coaching, and training. And there's probably only one thing in my entire business that is still has the John Maxwell stamp on it. Obviously, everything I do has a little bit of that stamp just because that was kind of, the birthplace of it all. But for the most part, it's all my content, it's my keynotes, it's my lunch and learns, it's my journey, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Um, yeah, I was thinking about when I joined the John Maxwell team, and um, that was 8 years ago. Coming up to that's crazy, man. Time flies.
I kind of forgot
Yeah,
that you were also a John Maxwell coach. How much of
yeah.
what you do is based on that material versus kind of what you're doing on your own?
Um, I it's kind of zero. Um, but kind of like what you said, like there's um but so much stems from it because I got out of the army, and knew from my experience there that I wanted to be a better leader. Wanted to, if I had the opportunity to lead people, I wanted to be the best leader I could, and I wanted to make an impact with people. And of course, I'd read a couple of John's books through the couple of years before that in different roles, and then I saw that he had the John Maxwell team, which was only 5 years old at that time. Um, and I was like, "That's really cool. This could be a really great avenue." So I figured out how to pay for it. Um, Jumped into the training, and I really just did it for the leadership aspect and the speaking. And it wasn't until the certification event in Orlando when I really saw what coaching was.
Mhm,
And I was like, wow, like coaching can be really powerful. Um, so I went so I went back to my leadership role under the leader I was kind of talking about earlier, that we kind of felt was manipulation or was really manipulative, and hopefully it's just unintentional, but hopefully he's grown. Um, but yeah, and then we just growing and be like, this is not how I feel my leadership is going to be. So, and I don't want to be like you, which he kind of wanted me to be like him, and so we ended up having to part ways. Uh, and then I came back to Colorado where I am now, and got connected with another coaching company, and kind of off to the races from there. Um, so nothing's particularly based on the John Maxwell team, other than I do strengths coaching, um, and kind of leadership development based around strengths and their team strengths.
yeah, I guess I didn't mention
Yeah,
too, I'm a disc consultant, so I
yeah,
love the disc method.
yeah. So how, like, kind of what is? Tell us a little bit more about DISC, and how do you implement that with individual people or with teams?
Yeah, well, I get asked often, which it kind of I never anticipated being asked this question, but they say, "Why disc? Why not strengths
Hmm.
finders? Why not Enneagram? Why not these?" And I said, when I started at my management job, I had to take the disc assessment, and I was a very high D, which, obviously I was direct and assertive and didn't really take anyone else's thoughts and opinions. I was changing things constantly. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be that personality mix. I had a pretty high I too. So DISC is essentially these behaviors. DISC is about the different behaviors that are kind of on the outward what everyone is seeing. And so D, which again was me, was that direct, assertive, and the I, which was outgoing and very talkative. I saw both pieces of that, but I was kind of separating them. I was being the excited and positive, optimistic individual with our tenants and with their families. But then with the staff, I was being that direct and that assertive. I didn't like that combination of it. And I went about changing it. They said, you're not necessarily going to be able to change it. It does change over time, but it's not typically something that like we activate. It's not a change that we kind of get to decide. But I said, I'm going to try. And I started reading personal development. I went and joined Rotary. I joined the chamber. I joined boards. I really wanted to be that positive and optimistic person that other people could draw that energy from. Not, like I said, in a toxic positivity way. I just really wanted to be that person. And so I went about achieving that. And by the time I left, 3 years later, this was after COVID. I stayed through COVID. I like to say that I didn't up and leave them. I really did try and make sure that we got through it, but I was ready. Once you get through COVID in a dementia facility, like there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
You've done the thing. So I went and I got a new job. And by the time I took my disc assessment after that 3 years, I was a high I and my D had gone significantly down. Now, who's to say whether or not, I fudged a couple answers? It's always possible. People do that. You can see they do that if they're surprised about answers that they get. Typically, the disc assessment is pretty spot on. So if you're confused about something, it's likely that you answered a question wrong. But I was really excited by that. And that actually motivated me to keep going. And it motivated me to want to continue to be that person for other people and to try. And John Maxwell always says you need to work on your strengths, not your weaknesses. And I do agree with that to a point, but no one can do a push-up for me. No one can be inside my mind. I'm the only person who knows 100% of the way that I think. And my negative mindset around things was a negative aspect. It was something that I didn't like. It was something that I felt like wasn't in my control. And so trying to take control of the positivity aspect of it, of DISC, of trying to change that, the positivity started to creep into my own mind. That repetition, the repetition of constantly turning around and asking yourself the right question, that's what's going to condition your mind. The repetition is going to condition your mind to ask the better question and to have a more positive approach. And it's really going to start to activate your ability to foster that in others. So I love DISC. I utilized it myself, and now I get to have that conversation with other people. And it's funny. I always laugh when people are like, "Yep, that's me." They read the assessment page and they're like, "Yeah, they kind of pegged me," because it really is that accurate.
Yeah, I think the neat thing about assessments is that it's it's really just a resource um, for for the individual.
Hmm.
For me, I, when I took the s- well, I took the Clifton Strengths Assessment when I was in the Army, and it was okay, great. I didn't do anything with it. When I came back to Colorado after that experience, I retook it, and I actually felt like I really actually affirmed, like, yeah, like I actually do have strengths.
Hmm.
I'm not like, I don't know, how I kind of, I'm not a piece of crap. Like I felt coming out of that leadership position, like there was great things about me. So, and it helped me put words um, to what I knew innately about myself, but I could at least communicate it. And I think that's the great thing about these assessments. And um, so that's neat. Yeah. And I like to, we like to kind of say in the strengths community, like, yeah, focus on your strengths, but you need to understand your weaknesses because you need to manage them. You need to have, support system. You need to have tools in place. Maybe you have another person on your team that is the opposite, has the
Hmm.
strengths that you don't have, and having these kind of assessments can help kind of line those up.
Yeah, that's something I really love
Yeah.
about DISC too, is when someone's looking to hire, they say, who do we need on our team? What
Mhm.
combination do we need on our team to augment our weaknesses? And so being able to do that, and I love that people understand that you can't just hire people that are exactly like you. It just doesn't, it probably works for a little while because you're friends and you feel like everything's all hunky dory. And then all of a sudden it backfires and you're like, what happened? Well, probably could have saw it coming. But so I've really enjoyed having that conversation too. Who do I promote that's going to really thrive in this current environment that we have, but also because of their strengths, who's going to be able to to really grow this position? And then also, who do we hire? Who do we add to this team? And I've seen people not necessarily my advice, but just take the disc advice in general and regret that they didn't. And then they end up going back and changing it, which I always think is so funny. Because we just have to learn those lessons for ourselves. Sometimes you can't help what you can't help.
Well, we are coming up to our time, and I want to respect your time. So thanks for being on. But final thoughts. If you had anything to say to folks that might be watching live or coming back um, to watch the recording, what's your final thoughts for them?
I My entire premise around what I teach, how I coach, and the keynotes that I give, my entire book is on how can you control your own mindset? How can you take control of the things that you can control so that even when things happen, even when, because bad things are going to happen and it's unfortunate, but if you can start that process of building a really strong foundation and building a life that you love, you're not going to have to pick up the pieces, and you're definitely not going to have to do it by yourself. You're going to have created and cultivated those relationships for people that are going to stand by you. The stronger your foundation of self is, your habits, your willingness to understand, believe, and grow, your confidence, your discipline, your joy, and your ability to be self-aware and emotionally aware and to trust yourself and other people, those are the things that are going to continue to move the needle forward. It's not what position you're in. It's not how many people you lead. It's not the amount of money you make. It's your commitment to being the best version of yourself. And that comes with your ability to control your own happiness. So get off my soapbox now.
It is great to have coffee with you this morning. Thanks for coming on, sharing your story. And I said your name wrong, last name wrong earlier, but tell us where can we connect with you?
I am on DesireePetrich.com. You can find me on LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time, but LinkedIn, Instagram at Desiree Petrich. Like I said, Lead with Confidence is my podcast. My book will hopefully be coming out towards the end of June. And if you happen to be in the Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota area, I'm also hosting a leadership conference in August that I'm so super excited about. I have 4 different keynote speakers coming and breakout sessions and all the fun things. So
Awesome. So that's really cool. I'm excited to hear how that goes. So connect with Desiree, visit her website. Um, keep your eye out for her book coming in June. And of course, thanks for joining us with Coffee with Ryan. Feel free to connect with me at xlcoaching.net or shoot me an email at ryan@xlcoaching.net. And we'll be back the second Monday of April. Man, already. For another time with Coffee with Ryan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this morning, and have a great week.